The thing is, for the longest time, I thought Alita was never going to happen. I thought that, James Cameron had originally saw the manga and saw like, oh, I want to do a film about it. And he talked about it for the longest time. I want to do a film, I want to do a film. And I was like, yeah, sure. He'd been talking about this since like the late 90s. And I thought it was never going to happen. And eventually it did happen because he handed off to Robert Rodriguez, who, he says he's going to do a lot of stuff, but eventually he gets around to finishing it too. Alita, I think most people are kind of in agreement that Alita kind of broke the mold for like anime and manga going to live action because it remained somewhat faithful. In fact, if you look at like just the essential story and plot elements, it pretty much follows the anime by the letter. And then adds in like extra elements of the manga, stuff like rollerball. Yeah, rollerball! Sorry. Working with what I got here. So yeah, I feel like it hit the marks of what it needed to from Alita, but at the same time, I felt that Rodriguez gave the film his own touch, where he realized like oh, there are bar brawls, and I like to joke about this, like he used like Samurai Jack logic, where he realized like, oh, if they're robots, then I can cut and brutalize them all I want. And so that's what he ended up doing with Alita. And if you look at it, Alita's pretty much on the same level of Sin City with its violence. It's just it can get away with it because most of them are robots. So you can have decapitation and amputation and bifurcation in your film. So I did feel like a lot of the dialogue was a little bit too expositional in some parts, but I like the fact that they glazed over most of it. When you got into when you got to like the tragic ending, which I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting this film to go as far as to have like the tragic death that comes at the end, the tragic slaughtering of a dog. I was like, there's no way they're going to do this for the film, for a PG-13 film. It's like, no, but they're doing it because James Cameron's heading this and he wants it to be very, very, very true. And that's what he ended up doing. And I was surprised by how much I dug in, how much they kind of glazed over the spots that could have been troubling, like the fact that Christoph Waltz is playing this character called Dyson Ito. I like to imagine it's like the Marty Chang line. She's like, oh, my dad is Asian. But yeah, I love how he staged it. It looks nice. It flows pretty well. I like that they changed certain elements to make it more relatable, to make it have more of an arc to the characters instead of just being a straight adaptation. It's kind of that beautiful mixture of like being faithful to the anime and also putting your own stamp on it. So it doesn't just feel like taking the manga and the anime and putting it on the big screen. It actually feels like a Robert Rodriguez film when you're watching it with the barroom brawl.
Bumblebee.
Which one?
Bumblebee.
Bumblebee? Kind of the film, another film to break the mold of the Transformers. Here's the thing, like, the thing is, like, with Michael Bay's Transformer movies, they're on a level of bizarre insanity that in order to duplicate that, you would have to actively be trying to make your film that insane. So I don't like to put Bumblebee in that box of saying like of comparing it to the Michael Bay Transformers because that's an easy hurdle. That's like like as long as you don't fudge it up too bad and don't go too insane with your visual effects and adding too many characters, too many plot lines, then you're fine. I like what Bumblebee does in terms of like how it's set up. It realizes what you don't do with the Transformers movie, which is like you don't throw a lot of Transformers at the screen, you just throw maybe one or two. You can have like an opening battle, but then you focus on one that we can get to know, one that we can care about. You only focus on two villains, just two, so that we can get an idea of their characters and you don't have to figure out who's who when the bullets start flying. And then you tell a very simple one-person story about, a girl and a robot. Not a bad story. The thing is though, like once you take it out of the Michael Bay camp, comparing and saying like, oh, it's better than Michael Bay films. Yes, it's better than Michael Bay. We've established that. But now it's coming into this box of films like E.T. and the Iron Giant. Now to be fair, yes, E.T. and Iron Giant are like way up here. They're huge in that kind of like like Echidna's robot type thing. Or Echidna's alien. But when you're on that level, I think you do have to hone it a little bit more. Now that being said, I like what Bumblebee's set up. I think if they're going to make more of these Transformers films, which as long as they make money, they will. But this one didn't make a lot, so maybe. But if this is the route they want to take, okay, sure. But I think they need to hone it more. It feels like they just did a lot of pruning from the Michael Bay Transformers. Like, okay, you've pruned it down, you've taken out all the crap that we don't need. now you need to start putting your mark on it. Because honestly, it just felt like a standard, you know, kid and his alien or kid and his robot type story, without being that distinct. It had some fun stuff going for it, and there's like a little bit of the Bayisms lingering there, like with like the 1980s references. And there are some elements where it does feel like they're actively trying to prune it as it goes down. Like, it's like, see, here's a more simplified version of Bumblebee. Here's the battle you all wanted to see. And like, oh, you think these two characters are going to have a romantic relationship? Guess what? They're not. I gotcha. It's like okay, you got it. You've got over the hurdle of Bay. Now let's work on making a better film. Let's work on like just not being like, it's better than Bay, you know. So I was kind of lukewarm on the film, but if they want to go that route with Transformers, I say keep going for it, because then they can hone in on something better. They can stage characters they actually care about, and maybe not do so many Budweiser ads. Into the Spider-Verse is by far one of the best superhero films of last year, which was tough because it was a very interesting year. We had stuff like Black Panther, which felt culturally relevant. You had Avengers: Infinity War, which pretty much broke the mold on how you write, you know, structures in superhero films by focusing more on the villain. But Into the Spider-Verse, it just feels like it culminates with everything that you want to see out of a Spider-Man film. You know, it plays with the lore, it makes it accessible enough, it makes it fast enough, and of course we got to mention, the animation. They go out of their way to experiment with so many different styles here. You have like cel-shaded forms, you have flat forms, you got like, you know, the Spider Noir, you got the black and white stuff. The most interesting thing I found about the film that I kept looking at, and it wasn't so much distracting as much as I love the fact they did it, is that they don't use motion blur, but if you look in the backgrounds, you can kind of see, they kind of have like that kind of layer bleeding that you see in comics sometimes, where kind of like the color will like bleed off into different layers and different sides there. And I just kept staring at it because I'm like, this is working. Like, it's not as like bizarrely distracting, because a lot of people were looking at like the herky-jerkiness of it and thought, I don't know if this can work, but I love the fact that they kind of embraced the fact that they were embracing more keyframes as opposed to smoother animation. So it created this much more interesting dynamic from what we usually see in CG animation, which is usually more like fluid. And here it kind of feels, it embodies more like the comic book aspect, you know, to say the least, of like, you know, having the word bubbles, and going into different universes, and then breaking the fourth wall every now and then. It's basically everything that I wanted out of a Spider-Man film that I didn't know I wanted. So, yeah, it's a big surprise from Sony, and it's easily, it didn't surprise me one bit that Into the Spider-Verse won every animation award that came out. It was doing stuff that hasn't been seen in any superhero film or animated film. It was a no-brainer. It was by far one of my favorite films from last year. So I've gushed tons about it, but there's a little more to say than that. It's the best superhero film last year.
How would you classify Captain Marvel?
Captain Marvel? I think it kind of fits neatly into the you know, like the solo debut of a lot of these Marvel characters. But I love the fact that they always come with like a little bit of a unique angle here. Like, a lot of people will say, like, you know, all Marvel superhero films are the same, except if you pay attention to them, they're actually quite different from each other. Like, Guardians of the Galaxy is pretty much a space opera. You get to like Captain America, Winter Soldier, it's, you know, it's more political drama. And I love the fact that like Captain Marvel is essentially kind of like this kind of like sci-fi spy thriller when you think about it. When you've got, you know, kind of like the Skrulls who they can look and sound like anything, and you've got this like tangled conspiracy plot around Captain Marvel. I like that aspect. A lot of people have kind of I've kind of been like mixed on it because they feel like the Captain Marvel doesn't have quite like the same arc, but I kind of like how they shake it up a bit, because usually the way that they would go with these solo arcs with Marvel is that, you know, you would have a character who's in his element, you know, he thinks he can do everything, he's cocky, then has it all taken away from him, and then he has to build himself up back as the hero. And I love the fact that in this film, Captain Marvel she kind of has the power, but she doesn't have this idea of herself yet, and has to kind of build herself up from already having her memory damaged. And I love that kind of like loose, non-linear style, which kind of like shakes it up a bit, because like the film could have gone there. It could have started her off as the pilot, then had her go up into the air, then have her, crash, and then have her gain the powers through that way. But I love the fact that, because it keeps in line with the spy thriller aspect, keeping a mystery going to it. I do feel it feels a little bit flat in some places, but there's kind of an interesting aspect to its flatness, where it kind of feels almost kind of like a breather, like a break. Because usually with Marvel films, we're used to stuff like, like Civil War and Infinity War and Guardians of the Galaxy just being like bam, 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 everything like immediately. And I love how Captain Marvel kind of has these little breaks where they kind of like take in the 1990s kind of aesthetic here. And I also love the fact that there's also subtlety in how they don't go overboard with the 90s aesthetic. And they could have easily gone with every 90s reference they could think of, but I love how it weaves itself well in there. Like when they have to listen to the black box, they have to go listen to the WAV file on Windows 95. And they have that great earnest moment where she's looking at the screen and she's like, what's it doing? It's loading. And it's like, it's funny because we relate to that, but it makes sense for the time, so it doesn't feel like they're trying for a joke. So there was some cleverness there. Yeah, I kind of dig Captain Marvel. I don't hold it as high among like some of like the other solo films because I think they have like a better arc. But I really do appreciate the fact that they are dicing it. They are trying to mix it up. They're trying to say, like, what if we just have like the straight solo? We kind of have this like mystery, lost memory angle, and kind of like divvy it up from there to kind of shake it up. Because I keep hearing them say this all the time with Marvel films, saying like, oh, this is not going to be like an origin film. This is not going to be an origin film. And this film kind of is an origin film, but they do try to dice it up so it doesn't feel... Because I get the feeling they come in and say, oh, we're not going to do an origin film, but they're like, crap, how do we introduce you? How do we introduce these characters? So you got to have an origin, but at least you got to find a fun way to do it. So yeah, I think Captain Marvel fits neatly into the rest of the MCU at this point.
Fantastic Beasts?
Yeah, the Crimes of Grindelwald?
Yeah.
It's weird with like the Crimes of Grindelwald because like it feels like the one thing that a lot of people I think get tired of hearing is saying like, oh, we got a planned trilogy, and then so when J.K. Rowling says we got a planned poly-trilogy, is that even a thing? We're gonna do 5 films. So you're like, oh great. So if you're doing 5 films, that means you're gonna have bridges, and Crimes of Grindelwald is one of those like kind of agonizing bridges too, because like throughout the film I kept waiting for something to happen. It always felt like there was always like distant, like Grindelwald's plan was always like, I'm gonna be in the background orchestrating all this stuff. So like I need to meet this guy who has this amazing power who's gonna like destroy the wizarding world. But I'm gonna back up, I'm gonna like stage it so like we kind of bump into each other at the bar. And that's what pretty much the whole film is like. It's just like we gotta like stage it so like it's like, oh, I'm too shy to talk to him, I don't know if I should. And then like try to like stage it so that has to happen. And at the same time you have Newt who's just kind of doing the same thing as the last film, just kind of just being nonchalant. It's like, I don't even know why I'm here. I just want to go find animals. Until eventually they get to the end of the film and it's like, oh, my animal friend got hurt. Maybe I should do something about this Grindelwald guy. It drug on, and I hate the fact that they keep putting all the, this is like its own problem with Michael Bay. It's like putting all these extra characters and arcs that really just took me out of its world, especially when they have that scene at Hogwarts where they have to use the what was it, like the boggin, where it's like your fears that come out and you have to transform it into something that's ridiculous. It's like, oh, here's your worst fear. It's like, oh, it's all comical, it's your fear. And here in this film, they show your fear, and it's a drowning dead baby. Okay. I miss those happier days of Hogwarts. It plays, and again, like, it plays really loose with the mythology too. Like, I've never been huge into Harry Potter, but I could tell, like, it's playing really loose, because throughout the film, I could not stop hearing everyone chatting in the audience, like saying, like, wait, who's he? Who's he? Oh, this is this character from such and such, and he relates to this line. But it happened like every 5 scenes. Like they kept bringing up like other characters who relate to other stuff, and most of them don't do anything. Like Dumbledore is there. Like, okay, yeah, it's nice that you cast Dumbledore. What's he doing? Oh, other film. And it's like, if you're gonna do that, man, you've got to find something more fun to do than just throw throw like magical beasts at me though. Because even the magical beasts, you're kind of like, there's an anticipation, like you see all those beasts that are in his sanctum, and they like aside from like one or two, they never come out. Like I thought that giant seahorse that he had looked really cool. It's like, oh man, maybe something will happen in the ocean. Maybe we'll have to bring it out. Never comes out again. Because they bring a cat into play. Because like, look at the kitty.
Deadpool 2?
Deadpool 2, it's how's the best way to say this? Deadpool 2, it feels like it's very much on par with the first film in terms of its comedy. It feels very aware of itself. I still laughed at it. I enjoyed that it's still poking fun at itself, especially that opening bit where basically literally gives the middle finger to Logan for stealing his thunder. And then at the end there, where it literally gives the finger to Green Lantern for what they think is destroying Ryan Reynolds' career. I just wish that the film were a little bit more aware enough of like the superhero, the problems with superhero films to poke more fun at them. Because this film has a problem that I see happen with a lot of superhero films, is that when you get a sequel, you load up way too many characters into it and you kind of get lost in the shuffle. Because like, the biggest thing I was hoping for with Deadpool 2 was like, okay, you got Cable. Cable is a great straight man dad with Deadpool. Great, like and you got Josh Brolin, that's perfect. You can make Thanos jokes too. You can have it. That's great. But then they weave in, this extra like X-Force characters they got to bring in, and then they weave in the kid who might bring about Armageddon, and then they weave in like the Juggernaut, and then Cyclops is back, and then Nega is back too, and she's brought another character with her, and we've got so many arcs going on here. And I wish it poke fun at this too. It's like, man, there are too many characters here. Because it does, because the thing is like, it's making most of the same jokes we saw in the last film. Like they go to the Xavier school, it's like, oh, there's not really any X-Men here. And then they put a few X-Men in the background. So yeah, I like the jokes that they make here, but I'm kind of fearful about what they'll do with the third film. I really hope they shake out the third film, because it kind of just felt like more of a rehash of what Deadpool's done before, while still trying to like, it felt like, I wish they took it more earnestly with trying to like rip off Logan by essentially stirring the pathos pot. So I'm pretty sure Deadpool 3 is going to happen. If it does, I hope they really mix it up for a trilogy. I hope they just go insane and not just stick to what they've usually done. Because yeah, it's a fine film, but it kind of makes me fearful for the trilogy closer. Overlord. Kind of want to notice, and I think it's going to become a cult hit over the years. How many people are aware of Overlord? Okay, a few of you. Overlord was this great little J.J. Abrams produced Nazi zombie film. Now, when you say that initially, you think, oh, okay, Nazi zombies. We've kind of been down this route before with stuff like Dead Snow and Dead Snow 2, and there's been exploitation films like Ground Slime. But I was surprised by how earnest Overlord is. They stage it like the first act is pretty much just like kind of like a straight World War II action film. They have like the big, loud explosions where they gotta get down on the ground, there's mines exploding, there's gunfire everywhere, they're hiding out from the Nazis, and it's really engaging filmmaking. And then you get to that second act where they break into the Nazi compound, there's zombie experiments going on, there's disembodied heads, and it feels like really out there gore that you usually don't see in these type of films. And I had a blast. I think a lot of people are gonna look more highly on this film over the years, saying like, where the hell was this film? It's like it came out in November. I mean, Crimes of Grindelwald was out, so maybe they saw that at the time. But yeah, Overlord is a lot of fun, especially if you're a horror hound. It's essential viewing, especially for zombie films. I'll go so far as to say it's one of the best zombie films we've seen in a decade. So. Aquaman is cool. A lot of people say like Aquaman is cool again. The thing is, like, a lot of people like to make jokes about Aquaman, but the thing is, most people make jokes of Aquaman based on Super Friends. And the thing is, if you go by Super Friends as a reference, every character is useless. Like Superman was useless in that show, Batman was useless in that show. They could barely do anything. It was the 70s, and they were putting handcuffs on cartoons. But yeah, Aquaman. I was surprised by how well James Wan, like I said, James Wan, he takes it earnestly. He understands the lore, and he understands it enough to deliver it in kind of a fun way instead of making it heavily expositional. Because this easily could have been a two-part film or a 3-hour film. It's close to 3 hours. It's about like 2.5 hours. But he does a great job delivering all this kind of like fantasy lore to get you engaged in it while taking it earnestly. Because he could have taken the different route. Because I kept thinking of when Geoff Johns, and they actually adapted some of Geoff Johns' work in here. But with Geoff Johns, there was a great, I believe it was like with Brightest Day, I believe they did an arc with Aquaman where Aquaman walks into a seafood restaurant. And everyone's like, oh, what's Aquaman doing in a seafood restaurant? It's like, and someone asked, like, Aquaman, why are you eating fish? Fish are your friends. And then he basically said, no, fish are stupid. And he basically like clears the air about what he actually does. Like no, I can't have conversations with fish. I'll eat fish fry, whatever. And they could have gone that route. They could have gone the goofy route. They could have tried to get all the silly stuff out of the way. But James Wan has enough faith in it where he doesn't have to clear the air. And that might be partially because, you know, no one questions Jason Momoa. That, you know, he can throw on the orange and the green and no one will question him. It's frickin' Jason Momoa. And he can wear orange and green if he wants to. He can wear the scales. But I love the way it's big, it's weird, it's dumb, but it knows what it's trying to be. It knows it's trying to be this big fantasy lore thing. Yes, it does kind of shelve. It does kind of shelve Black Manta. They are obviously saving that for another film, but I think for what they use him for setting him up for the revenge scheme, I think it does well enough there. In terms of setting that up, I love how it's kind of interconnected with like the family here. I love how they deliver the stuff. Yes, the acting's wonky. Yes, the visual effects looks a little bit bizarre, but it knows what it's trying to be. It's trying to be big, dumb fun, and it does a really good job of it. Honestly, I was kind of underwhelmed by How to Train Your Dragon, and I think this goes back to how there's too much going on, because I wanted to love the film as a trilogy closer. It's clear they want to, you know, establish that Hiccup has got to grow up and he's got to let go of Toothless. That's a really great arc. It could be very emotional. We've spent a lot of time with these characters, but unfortunately we also have to deal with another dragon trapper who's really not that interesting. We don't really have any history with him. We also have to deal with the fact that a bunch of men are coming on to Hiccup's mom, which kind of plays into another subplot. We also have to deal with characters wanting to grow a beard, characters wanting to take over. And they keep piling on character after character after character, where it's like, it should be a film about saying goodbye to Hiccup and Toothless, where we have to say goodbye to every single other character. Every single other character that we built up from the first film and the second film has to be said goodbye to. Even Gerard Butler, as Hiccup's dad, has to come back in, even though he's passed on since the last film. But we had to say goodbye to him too, for some reason, with flashbacks that don't really connect there. I was hoping that the villain would connect with Hiccup, like have some lore, and it seemed like he had some connection, but then they don't. It's like, no, he's just a random villain voiced by F. Murray Abraham, who could have been an interesting villain, but there's so little time for him. There's so little time for everything with all the characters that when we get to the emotional moment, I didn't really feel that much for Toothless. We have so little time. We don't even address who the attacking militia is. I was guessing they were like from China based on their boats and their armor, but we never quite addressed who these people are. Like, and I understand, yeah, they're just fodder, they're just stuff to blow up, whatever. But you know, to have a little bit of, like, because I was even like with like the second film where, you know, he had just a villain who was essentially just harassing Dragon, just going ah. There was still a little bit of an arc to it. They dressed like, oh, I pulled this student from so far away. There's some stake in it. Us, ooh, it is a great time for horror, man. Yeah, Us is like Jordan Peele is kind of like a lot of people say. Yeah, Jordan Peele has kind of proven himself that he's not kind of like a one-hit wonder. You know, he's not going to go the Neil Blomkamp route where every single one of his films are just going to be about a societal commentary about race, and not kind of like, you know, like a big surprise about race or society in general. And I like the fact that Us keeps it very subtle, where you really have to keep in mind everything that's going on around you, that you can dissect it. Because it's one of those films where, like, even when you find out the twist, you're still, because once you find out the twist, then you want to go back and watch the film, because there are tons and tons of clues laid out there with the Jeremiah 11:11, the duplicates on the screen, the rabbits that are in the underground, how the underground was formed, how the different characters interact in the underground. There's so much fun stuff to dissect in there. And I love about the fact that it's its own, like, some people like it, like, where it's like, oh, he's the next Spielberg, he's the next Hitchcock, and it's like, no, he's Jordan Peele, he's the next Jordan Peele. Because yeah, like he does borrow a lot of stuff from horror, but they're very small stuff. Like obviously with the duplicate stuff, he's borrowing a little bit from like Kubrick's stuff with The Shining. There's a few dioptic shots in the underground where we focus on Adelaide's clone from like the front and she's in the back. That's clearly like Brian De Palma type stuff. But he uses it well. He weaves it to where it's its own thing, and it's just an amazing film to like go back and dissect and talk about everything with how it relates to what it's trying to say, all the different elements that lead up to it, trying to discuss the Jeremiah 11:11 verse, which is really cool when you think about like how it intertwines with like everything else there. So yeah, Peele. It's just another great sign that like Peele is taking off, and in a big way, I think Us is definitely going to be one of the better films this year. A lot of people right now are pulling for Lupita Nyong'o to be nominated for Best Actress, which might happen this year. I'm hoping it's not like another issue with like Toni Collette from last year for Hereditary, where they just thought the Academy doesn't like horror. I hope they don't. Like some people say like, oh, well, you should call it a thriller, because like there's a joke that like the difference between a horror and a thriller is that thrillers win awards. Except that Peele's Get Out won an Academy Award for writing, and Peele has said on record plenty of times, no, it's horror.
Super Troopers 2?
Super Troopers 2, I will admit, I kind of like Super Troopers 2. And that's mainly because like the Broken Lizard comedy troupe who do these films, you know, they did Super Troopers the original, they've done Club Dread, did they do Beer Fest?
Yeah.
I think they did, yeah. I've always kind of considered them like kind of very hit or miss with their comedy, and like even with like Super Troopers, it's kind of like, okay, there are a few skits that are kind of working here. I'm kind of digging the characters and what they're doing, but there were a lot of misses here. And Super Troopers 2 I actually kind of like because their batting average is a little bit higher here. They actually have quite a few great bits. Some of my favorite bits in there are kind of ones that are kind of unintentional, like the fact that, was it like Farva is only eating like certain M&Ms, something like that, and he pisses off the police chief. There's certain stuff they do. Like they play goofy, they go with like the ridiculous Canada aesthetics here. They make a lot of gross jokes. You have Rob Lowe talking on penises, so most of the jokes I found kind of hit home. The only kind of like wild card here that it's very hit or miss was kind of like the element of Farva, because Farva is one of those characters who is just like taken to the nth degree of like that one guy you know who won't shut the hell up and just constantly like even like there's kind of like a weird an oddness with like his like desire to like cut off his toe in the film for some reason. So you kind of think like, well, he deserves it, but he's doing it to himself, so it's kind of self-harm, so you're not quite sure how to feel about it. So yeah, I think it's strictly hit or miss, but I think I like it a little bit more than the first Super Troopers because they do have a few more good jokes in there. That and I love seeing Will Sasso back on screen again.
Yes.
That's overly Canadian trooper. The Predator, I kind of love in kind of like this kamikaze, batshit insane, look, there's nothing else I can do with Predator, so let's just go balls insane with it. And it is the most insane, but like they go for it right from the beginning, like within a few minutes, there's the alien crashing, within a few minutes, he's killing snipers, and within like a few minutes, we've already got like an alien artifact shoved up someone's butt. And it proceeds to be insane, and I think the film works, like, 'cause a lot of people really don't like the film, but I think if you look at Predator as a comedy, as like an SNL skit, it really works, because clearly no one is taking this seriously. Everyone is playing it up for a joke here. You have Keegan-Michael Key, who's clearly just having a ball with this type of material, and even the premise of how they blend in like Asperger's to be like the next evolution that the predators are targeting is just so unbelievably insane that I kind of love it. It's so ridiculous that like, okay, when you get to that point, you cannot be taking the film seriously at this point. When you have like characters that are getting like dissected and blood is spilling all over, and one character willingly jumps into an engine with like guns blazing, you can't take this film seriously at all. So in terms of like a comedy, I love it. But I can understand why people like it because it's a far cry from Predator, but I think Shane Black realized like, look, we're never going to be able to have that earnest predator. I could try to do it, but they probably want it to be PG-13, and the characters would be lukewarm, so I'm just going to go nuts insane.
Did Solo come out this year?
Yep, around May, it came out. I was kind of frustrated with the film, but mainly because like it's almost there as a sci-fi western. It's almost there. It's got all the elements. Some of it's firing, but some of the jokes and the origins that they're living here are really falling flat. And I wish the film had more faith in itself to embrace just the sci-fi western aspect to it. Because like instead of just being like, I don't care how Solo got his name, or how he got his gun, or how he met Chewie, or how he got to the Falcon. I don't need all that. Just make the film its own stuff. Because when it finally gets into the third act and stops making all these references and embraces more of kind of like its twisty nature, which really kind of does throw you for a loop by the end. Like, okay, I'm kind of getting into this now. It's kind of gelling a little bit. It's still kind of lingering here, and you can tell where Ron Howard was dicing everything up here. But I think it comes pretty damn close to being the space western that I wanted to. I think they saw what was happening. All the jokes were nailing, and like I think Ron Howard was brought in to kind of just like just solder it down, just to strip it down a little bit. And I think most of it is kind of works. I think most of it's kind of a salvageable film. It's not. Like I said, yeah, Star Wars is kind of like a huge barometer because a lot of people hold the trilogy in such high regard. It's not on that same level, but for being a decent, sci-fi western adventure film, it kind of nails it. There were a few moments where I was really kind of digging what it was trying to do here. So. Glass? Glass is it's weird, like, cause it feels like Shyamalan's trying to not do the twists. Because it parallels with, when Split came out. When Split happened, like, we were kind of like, when we were at the screen, I brought a friend to the screening while we were watching it. We were kind of like okay, it's not a great thriller, but the thriller aspect's kind of working here. I kind of dig the horror elements that it's weaving. And then we got to, right after the title comes, then you pan over in the bar and you start hearing the Unbreakable music, and then you bring Bruce Willis in. And me and my friend were just cracking up. We're just like, Shyamalan, he did the same thing he did in Unbreakable. It's like, you thought you were watching a thriller, but no, you're watching a superhero film. And now he's actually doing a superhero film with Glass. And the thing is, it feels way too all over the place, where it feels like Shyamalan wants to say something about the nature of superheroes, but then not at the same time. Like at one point, I kind of like the aspect where he's doing it as a tease, where he's saying like all superheroes and supervillains, they've got to have a big battle. And here, look, there's this giant tower here. Wouldn't this tower be great for a giant battle? Yeah, you could totally have a giant battle up here. And then it doesn't happen. That's like a big middle finger. They even show the tower again after that. It's like a huge middle finger. Hey, you ain't getting this. I kind of like that aspect of it, but the way that they talk about, the nature of comic books and superhero films, it feels like it's not really touching on anything. It just feels like, aren't superheroes weird? And here's like a weird story I could tell with like villains and heroes inside an insane asylum, which is a great concept. I love the concept. For like the first half of the film, I was digging it. I was loving how these different characters were coming together. Unfortunately, I think that, I'm blanking on his name here. From Split. James McAvoy. Clearly he steals the show. I think it should have been a Split sequel more than it should have been a Glass film, because let's face it, he dominates that screen. With all those 23 characters he's doing, and he nails them perfectly, he's great. And now he's thrown into this film, but I think the problem is that he's more scary when he's kind of like concealed in the dark and all these enclosed spaces where you can't get out and you're trapped with him. That's scary. But watching him in the parking lot where he rips off his shirt and like tries to like go all Hulk on like a police car, I'm sorry, but that's just too damn ridiculous. Because when I'm watching him fight Bruce Willis, I'm kind of thinking like, this is kind of like an Asylum DC film, where like, you get like the low rent like Hulk, and then you get the low rent Superman over here. And I also find it really confusing that the way that Shyamalan shoots it too. Like, you'll notice like whenever like he would shoot fight scenes, he goes all over the place with shots. Sometimes we see like, you know, Bruce Willis's perspective, sometimes we cut away from it. You'll notice that when they have that fight in the parking lot, in order to keep the budget down, they shoot around the punches. So you'll see like, you know, like, you'll see like a fist come through the other side of the armor, or you'll see McAvoy from inside the car. You'll see all these hidden special effects, and I think that was kind of a good idea, because if you actually show this stuff, it's already out in the open. It's gonna look more ridiculous. And then, like, yes, there is a twist ending, but that twist comes out of so left field that it comes out of left field, but it doesn't feel surprising for a superhero film. It's like, oh, there's a secret organization watching this whole time. That's a twist, but it's not like the crazy Shyamalan twist. Like, I don't know, I kind of miss the crazy Shyamalan twist now. I want that kind of like batshit insane type ending that he usually writes. So there was a little film that came out that was my favorite one of last year called You Were Never Really Here. Has anyone heard of this film? Perfect. Joaquin Phoenix plays kind of a hitman in this film who has to find the senator's daughter. Except the way that it's the best way that I describe this film is like, it's if someone gave Lynn Ramsey the keys to the Taken franchise and said, look, this franchise is out of gas. Just take the concept of a hitman trying to find a little girl and just make it make sense. Make it have character, make it artful, make it sophisticated, and shoot it well, do whatever you can to save this franchise. And that's exactly what Lynn Ramsey does. Like, I love how she stages Joaquin Phoenix as this kind of like, he has a troubled history, but we keep it in very brief, non-linear segments that kind of like come in through like his nightmares. I love the way they shoot this film because they don't give you the essential money shots. Like, at one point they have Joaquin Phoenix pick up a hammer to go to an apartment building full of pimps and prostitutes to basically lay waste to them. And we only see it from the security cameras. We don't see the money shot where he digs the hammer in there. We see it from a distance. Or we catch just the ending of it. We catch it like just in the background there. So that by the time when we actually do get to close-up in-your-face violence, it really hits home. And it feels like every death means something in here. So it's kind of like a more artful version of that kind of, you know, Taken aesthetic, where it doesn't feel like it's trying to go for like just a high body count, like it's actually trying to say something about the character in a very interesting way. And I gotta give the film credit too, because like they keep it like very non-linear, they keep it very quiet and subtle. And by the end of the film, there was like this couple behind me who was saying like, I don't get it, I don't understand. Did he have a troubled past or what? And while they were talking, the soundtrack, which has this kind of like synth score to it, it cranks so high that I can't hear them behind me. So I'm like, thank you. I don't know who's in charge of audio editing, but that's so great. I love the fact that they drowned them out at that point. So yeah, You Were Never Really Here is a great film. It's on Amazon Prime right now. Any other films that we should talk about? I think we're coming up on the end here. Yep.